This episode of the Fairway to Retail Success is brought to you by AGM vendor partner T-Commerce, the online retail solution for golf facilities. Give your members 24/7 shopping with no inventory risk. Visit tcommerce.shop to learn more. Now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fairway to Retail Success. I'm your host, Justine Cook, the AGM's Director of Membership and Education. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Benji Boyter, Director of Retail at Pinehurst Resort. With a passion for merchandising and an eye for high-end, high-volume operations, Benji has built a remarkable career across some of the most respected resorts in the country. From his early days at Kiawah Island to nearly a decade leading retail at the Sea Pines Resort, and now, since January 2024, at the iconic Pinehurst Resort in North Carolina. He brings deep expertise in visual standards, logo strategy, and team development. In this episode, Benji will share how he keeps multiple shops aligned with brand standards and what drives Pinehurst's logo strategy. We'll also explore some staff training across a large resort, upcoming initiatives, and his advice for merchandisers stepping into leadership roles for the first time. Benji, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Justine. Hearing you say all that just makes me realize that I'm just getting older by the day. So it really puts it in perspective when you throw that term decade around.
Uh,
It's wow. I don't think about it that way very
right,
often, but it is the
right.
truth. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, yes. So speaking of that, I know I gave a little bit of an overview of the places you've been, what types of roles, but can you walk us a little bit deeper through your journey in retail and the golf industry? How did you get started and what has led you to your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. I started, I think, like a lot of people in golf, I started in the cart barn
Mm.
and I started as a cart attendant for a local golf course near where I grew up in upstate South Carolina. And from there went the PGM route at Clemson University and was pretty fortunate early on. I think that I figured out that I didn't really have much of an interest in teaching. I did enjoy tournaments and events, but my passion was really in retail and merchandising. I think I just like looking at clothes and shoes all, but was able to, through the PGM program, spend some time doing some internships at various sites, one of which was Kiawah. And then after graduation, went back to Kiawah and spent, as you termed it, almost a decade there, and ultimately ended up moving from an assistant golf pro to the retail team, eventually overseeing the retail operations at the Sanctuary Hotel there. If you've ever visited Kiawah, it's a beautiful oceanfront hotel. At the time, I think we had 4 stores in that hotel, and it was just a great opportunity to learn. Ashley Agapian, who's still the director of retail there, she was very kind when I went to her and said, listen, I enjoy running the operations of these shops, but I'd like to learn more about the buying and the behind the scenes aspects. And she very graciously allowed me to do that. And that led to almost 9 years at Sea Pines running the operation there, a number of retail outlets there, including the RBC Heritage, the PGA Tour event. A lot of fun at Sea Pines, really a lot of fun running that tour event every year, the merchandising operation there. And then, as you said, about a year and a half ago, that led me here to Pinehurst. And I was very fortunate to come to Pinehurst as a guest for almost 20 years for different events and Carolina section events and
Mm.
different things. And now I'm able to call the area home. But it's been a great ride so far, and hopefully still have quite a bit to go.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing all that. Those PGA Tour events are truly on another level. I always love hearing the experiences of folks who have been a part of those at their facility. So very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There, it was something that we really grew from the time I started there in 2015 until leaving there. My last one was 2023.
Mm.
And that was something that we were able to grow from about a $600,000 event a year to almost a $3 million event in terms of retail revenues.
Wow.
A lot of fun. That event gets great local support
Mm.
from the local economy there on Hilton Head Island. And it's a wonderful event. I know in terms of PGA Tour events, it's thought of as somewhat of a small market event. But if you've ever had the opportunity to attend, you know that couldn't be anything further from the truth. It's an absolute fun event and really well supported by the locals and the state of South Carolina in general.
That's awesome. That's really terrific. So at Pinehurst, you obviously have a lot of ground to cover. It's a
Mhm.
massive property, massive retail operation. How do you stay organized and make sure that each one of your shops and retail outlets is both visually and operationally aligned with your brand standards? Do you have things such as brand guidelines in place that help guide the operation?
Mhm. I wouldn't say we have brand guidelines in so much as we've got something on paper, so to speak, but we've got a great team of merchandisers and buyers for all of our outlets. I think one of the things that Pinehurst, walking into this situation, Laura Robinson, who's a dear friend of mine and was here for a long time before that, she did a great job of really setting up a team where everybody has a dedicated responsibility. That's not to say that we all don't do four or five or six different things over the course of a day. We all do that, right? But we've got the people in place to where you're not wondering, hey, whose job is this or who's supposed to be covering that? Or I thought so and so was doing this. She really did a great job of setting the stage there. And we've tried to continue that over the last year and a half. We've grown in that time, just in the last year and a half. We've opened up a couple of new stores during that time. We've got more to come, which I think we're going to talk about a little later. But just with that growth, how do you respond to that growth? Even some of our existing stores through new lodging that we've opened up, for example, at course number 8, we've opened up cottages there, which has increased both the food and beverage revenue and the retail revenue. So making sure that we've got the right pieces in place, and we're looking to add to our staff later this year, moving into next year, again, in response to that growth. And I think another thing Pinehurst does a great job of is really not waiting until the growth hits you to respond to it, is trying to get out in front of it a little bit. I know that's tough to do sometimes because you don't know if you're opening a new outlet or if your business is just growing in general. It's tough to predict exactly how much. Are you going to, or you need one person? Do you need two people? Do you just need part-time? Do you need full-time positions? But I think Pinehurst as a company does a great job of allowing us to get out in front of that and identifying those areas where, hey, we're looking to add, but in order to do, we've got to add staff as well.
Right, absolutely. There's certainly, I know that's a question that comes up among our membership and probably something for us to dig into in our
Mhm.
education is when to know when you need more staff. When is it time? How can you tell? You may feel like you might need it, but then how do you show that maybe it's getting your leadership on board? That's sounds like you really mastered that there.
Yeah, I think it's a moving target to some degree, but again, like I said, you have to be realistic with your projections, but you also have to, there's got to be an understanding and a management and a leadership component of being willing to allow you to do that as a team and to say, okay, if we're going to look at these growth opportunities, part of that is the personnel behind them.
Absolutely.
And we've got a great visual merchandiser here for our main shop at our main golf campus. We've got a great merchandiser, Leah, who visits our satellite shops as well as our hotel shops. And again, that's where we're looking to add more as we continue our growth at golf courses number 8 and number 10. Heather Schaefer, who's our head golf buyer, she does a tremendous job of putting these buying plans together. And really, as she's putting her buys together, if she's looking at where these products are going to go within the shops and really just communicating that to her team, just does an absolutely awesome job of that. And very fortunate in that regard. We've got a wonderful warehouse team that, as you can imagine, with an operation the size of ours, not just from a revenue standpoint, but just from a physical location. We've got, I think, 12 physical locations, making sure that the product gets to where it needs to be in a timely manner, gets replenished in a timely manner, and they just do a tremendous job of that as well. So again, a lot of moving parts, but a lot of really competent people in those positions doing a great job.
Thank you. That's all terrific. So Pinehurst certainly has some of the most recognizable logos in golf, if not the most recognizable. Can you tell us a little bit about the course specific logos and how you approach your logo strategy that certainly adds more layers to managing inventory and all of that? Can you talk through how that all works at Pinehurst?
So we don't have many. We've only got 14 logos right now that are currently in use. So we've got room to add. We've got plenty of room to add. But it is a challenge. That's part of what makes it fun. And even
Mhm.
in another year and a half or so, we'll have, I think, potentially three more logos to add to that. We'll
Wow.
have the men's and women's U.S. Open in 2029, and typically we would get the logos for
Mhm.
that about 2.5 years prior. So we'll have those
Right.
sometime in 2027. And I think, I don't want to spill the beans on this, but I know in 2014, I think they did a combo logo, the men's, so the men's open,
Okay.
women's open, and then a combination of the two. So I don't know that
Mhm.
we'll do that this time, that the USGA will do that this time. I'm anticipating it. So again, at least another 2 to 3 logos in the mix in 2027, along with golf course number 11, which we announced a few months ago. That'll be
Wow.
open with its own logos. We rarely retire logos here. We just add to our library,
Huh.
but it's a little bit of a challenge, specifically here at our main golf shop. I think last year at one point we had 7 or 8 logos operating out of one shop under one roof here. It's always a balancing act, and you're always trying to
Mm,
play that game of you don't want to add a logo at the expense of another logo, but you're just trying to find that right mix. And again, it just goes back to the evaluation on even almost on a weekly basis of what's moving and where we
mm,
need to devote those units there. We don't have a core, or excuse me, we don't have a logo for every golf course. So courses 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9 don't have their own logos. The shop at number 8, it features a mix of the number 8 logo and the Putter Boy logo. The number 8 logo has been growing in popularity. In fact, just last month, I think for the first time since we introduced that logo, we passed the 50% threshold out of that shop, meaning more than 50% of the items sold were number 8 logoed versus Putter Boy logo. But again, it's something that we evaluate constantly. We've got a few seasonal logos with the spring cradle and the fall cradle.
mhm.
So we launched those logos. For example, the spring cradle is on the calendar first day of spring. This year, I think it was March, I don't know, 20th or 21st or somewhere around in there. And then same thing for the fall. We'll launch the fall cradle logo, I think maybe September. I'm looking at my calendar here. I think September 20th or 21st.
Uh-huh.
Those are meant to be 60 to 90 days, get them in, get them out, create some
Right.
buzz during those times of the year, but
Mm,
tremendous popularity there. And again, just last year, for example, Pinehurst number 4, we've got two versions of that logo. And when we looked at things for the year, we saw that it was really at the bottom of the list in terms of sales. So we had to evaluate, is that just where it's going to live, or could we?
mhm,
So we switched to the second version of the logo, which contains the word Pinehurst and the number 4 underneath it, and our sales have more than doubled this year, which is pretty significant because if you followed us over the course of the year, golf course number 4 has been closed for the last 3 months. We had to renovate the greens out there. We had a number of issues there. Just reopened last week. It's in really good shape. It's getting a heavy dose of water as we're filming this right now. It is pouring down rain here in Pinehurst. So really just changing up that logo. I think after we've evaluated it through the first half of this year, we really think people like having the word Pinehurst in that logo. And there are a lot of really great logos out there that don't have words in them or have little
Mhm,
hidden. Our Pinehurst Sand Mines logo has a couple little hidden Easter eggs in there.
mhm.
But for that logo, it really was having the word Pinehurst in there. I think it has spurred sales there.
That's great. And what advice might you have for a facility who's maybe considering adding a logo? Maybe it's something short-term, commemorative, or something more long-term and permanent. Any advice you might have for someone navigating additional logos in their arsenal for the first time?
Yeah, I think really the first question I would ask is what's the purpose of the new logo? Is it for a new addition to your facility? Is it a lot of these logos are just merchandise driven and that's across golf, but that's across other aspects as well. My favorite sports teams, it seems like the Atlanta Braves introduce a new jersey every couple of years. And let's be honest, they're doing that to spur merchandise sales, right?
Sure.
So really try to figure out what it's going to be used for. And then as you dive into that, when you're whoever you're using, whether it's internal or whether you contract with somebody to produce this logo, if it is in our world, most of this is used for embroidery, right?
Mm.
So making sure that the person developing the logo understands that, hey, this is going to be used with needle and thread. My wife is a graphic designer by trade. She
Oh,
doesn't do
wow.
much of it anymore, but we've had some spirited debates over the years about what constitutes a good logo, and I always
Yeah,
look at it through the eyes of, hey, this is going to be embroidered on something.
sure.
And
Yes.
there are a lot of things that look really good at the
Mhm.
bottom of an email signature or
Yes.
digitally. And when
Hmm.
you start to put needle and thread, they just don't translate very well. So that's one of the
Hmm.
things that I've really, as I've worked with, we worked on this a bit at Sea Pines and then here as well. What are we using this for? And really driving that point home with whoever is creating the logo. And then the last thing that I would say is as you're going through this development process, rarely is it a committee of one. It's usually a committee of several, and that doesn't matter if you're at a private club, at a resort, or where you are. And so I would say anybody that's going to get a vote, for lack of a better way to put it, get them involved from the beginning because I've seen
Hmm.
so many good logo projects get derailed at the end of the road, so to speak, where ownership doesn't like something or upper management doesn't like
Hmm.
something, or I've had to be the bad guy before where we've gotten the logo almost to the finish line. I've had to say, whoa, this isn't going to translate. We'll never be
Sure.
able to embroider this. And so
Sure.
really making sure that anybody with a vested interest and it's going to be part of the decision making process, make sure they're involved from the beginning and as much lead time as you possibly can, because nothing's worse than spending a lot of money and spending a lot of
Yes.
time working on this logo and getting to the finish line, having
Mhm.
to scrap it and go back to the drawing board.
Certainly, I think those are all such key points, especially something might look great on a screen with seven different colors in
Right.
it, but then translating that to embroidery might not live up to what you
Yeah.
hoped.
It
And
could be a nightmare for
yes,
sure.
Yes, yes. And I'll add to that, read your clubs, if you're at a private club, to read the bylaws of what might be allowed. I've heard of that happening,
Yeah.
getting too far down a path, and then
Hmm.
reviewing what the club's actual bylaws include on how it's represented too.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you touched on this a bit earlier. It sounds like you have an outstanding team across all your retail outlets on property. How do you train and develop such a strong retail team across your large operation? Are there any specific systems or best practices that have really worked particularly well in developing your team?
Yeah, I think so. Going back to one of the things I said earlier, just having that structure in place where everybody knows what their role is, everybody knows who they report to, everybody knows when if there's a corporate group or golf group, we
Mm,
know that's Allie handling that, and maybe Mia on the back end of that. If we know that it's a golf buying question or a merchandising question, that's Heather. If we know that there's an issue with purchase order entry or whatever it may be, that's Amy. So just knowing what everybody's roles are, and then again, trying to be out in front a little bit when you can anticipate, hey, I think we're going to see an uptick in business here. We need to look at getting out in front of this. We do have a departmental specific trainer. This position trains
mm.
our retail, like hourly floor staff. And
Okay.
so we actually just had some turnover in that position within the last few weeks. But that position, again, it's critical for us because by and large, I'm somewhat behind the scenes. I'm not necessarily
Right,
out in front of the guest, but
right.
it's our retail staff that are on the floor have some of the most direct contact that you
Mm,
can have with a guest. They're not unlike a caddy that spends a long time on the golf course with a guest, or the people out
right.
front that greet the guests when they pull up to the clubhouse here. Making sure that not only that we have the right people in those positions, but that we have a trainer that's training them with the information and what they need to be effective in those positions. Because a lot of times
Mm,
we get these comments, these survey comments all the
mm,
time, and it's rarely somebody from our upper management team that's mentioned, or even to some degree
mm,
our management team. It's always the floor staff, the hourly staff, the wait staff, the bell staff, the staff that you check in at the hotel and out front here at the clubhouse. So those are the people that you really want to make sure that you invest in and make sure that
mhm,
you're giving them the tools and the resources they need to put their best foot forward and be the best representation of
mhm.
Pinehurst that they can be.
Yes, absolutely. Especially being that kind of first point of contact. A lot of, like you said, someone who's greeting them when they arrive or their caddy, any kind of first point of contact they're having when they arrive. And it sounds like you all make that extra special.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk a little bit about vendor relationships. What's your approach to them, especially with such a large property operation that your team is buying for? How do you select brands and make sure that they align with your resort's vision, whether it's maybe a new up and coming vendor that's come into the marketplace or reviewing what your vendor breakdown is and when that maybe needs to be adjusted? What's your
Mhm.
approach to managing your vendor partnerships?
I think when it comes to adding new brands, the first thing that I've always tried to do is really just have a feel for the demand, not just at our facility, but see how they're doing in the marketplace in general within
Hmm.
the industry. Social media is huge in that aspect. I think
Hmm.
you can learn so much through social media and what a brand's image is that they're trying to convey, and really matching up the image that they're trying to convey and the image that we're trying to convey here at Pinehurst. Number one,
Hmm.
seeing if those two align with each other. Again, I think going back to adding new brands, are people asking for it? Are we seeing it in our comments? Are we seeing it from our guests? Are we hearing it when they're on the floor and asking our retail
Hmm.
attendants? Are we seeing it if we have the chance to visit similar
Hmm.
facilities, whether it's another resort or another high volume retail
Hmm.
operation? I've got some friends in Major League Baseball, and we overlap on a lot of brands. And with the popularity that golf has had since COVID,
Sure.
a lot of the same people are wearing certain brands to the golf course. They may want to wear that brand to go cheer on their favorite team. So
Mm.
seeing where that overlaps, is it something that we could, if maybe we're not, could we carry it, a similar product from a vendor that we already have an existing relationship with? So maybe it's a
Mhm.
little bit of a new category or a different category for us, but
Mhm.
maybe an existing vendor already has that and we just haven't tapped into it. And then how does that impact our current line? So at the end of the day, Pinehurst is a massive operation, but I like to always say that we've got a big pro shop, but it still only has four walls. At some
Mhm.
point, it's until it gets bigger, one of two things has to happen if we want to add brands. Either we've got to move somebody out or reduce somebody's footprint, or we've just
Mhm.
got to increase the sales and the turnover so we can have space for that particular brand.
Mhm.
So how does it impact our current lines? How does it impact our relationship with those vendors? All those things go into whether or not a brand is a good fit for us. I think we've got the luxury here of just like we've got our what we call our premium, our championship courses, 2, 4, 8,
Mhm.
and 10. We've also got our golf courses that are maybe a little bit more budget friendly. And I think you can see that with the lines that we carry
Mm.
at each one of those shops. We're considered, and rightfully, we're not giving away rounds at Pinehurst number two and nights at the Carolina Hotel. I understand that. But we sometimes we forget that there is a demand for that sort of middle price point or even a little bit of a lower price point. There's just at the end of the day, people are comfortable spending a certain amount on products. And for some people, that may be $70 on a polo, and some people that may be $130 on a polo. And
Mhm.
that's just the reality of it. It doesn't matter what they're paying for golf or what they're paying for their room rate. We learned a valuable lesson this year. As I mentioned earlier, we closed golf course number 4 to redo the greens, but prior to that, because the course conditions were so poor, we were giving gift cards to our guests. If they kept their tee time at number 4, we would give them a gift card, and the amount varied. We played with the amount a little bit throughout the year. One of the things we learned though was that our average spend per ticket, especially here in our main shop, it only
Mhm.
went up $3 versus
Oh,
last year.
wow.
So you
Okay.
would think if we're giving somebody $100 or $200 gift
Right.
cards, that spend is going to go way up. What we learned is
Sure.
that's not actually the case. So
Interesting.
people walk in with an idea, whether it's a dollar amount or whether it's just an idea of what they're going to buy.
Mhm.
Maybe they're going to get themselves a shirt and a hat. Maybe they're going to take their brother a towel. They're going to get their wife a hoodie, and maybe they're going to get their kid a shirt. What we
Mhm.
learned is that didn't really change just because we were handing them a gift card. It was just their out of pocket expenses became less. So they had an idea of what they were going to spend, regardless of whether it was their money or, in effect, our money. So I thought that was a very, at the
Mhm.
beginning of the year, I think there was a lot of concern with, hey, we've got to track this because next year when we're making budgets for 2026, we're going to have these artificially inflated sales numbers because we were
Mm.
just giving away gift cards because of course conditions. And what we learned is that's not actually the case. People
Mm.
just, they're going to spend what they're going to spend regardless of whose money they're spending.
That's very interesting, almost like an experiment you did.
Yeah.
That's very like a great example, and maybe that should inspire some of our merchandisers. Don't be afraid to try something out with gift cards or
Yeah.
anything like that and
Hmm.
see how your customers respond. That's
Sure.
super insightful. I know Pinehurst was one of the first retail golf operations to have such a robust e-commerce
Hmm.
presence. You were really one of the first in the game, so to speak, of e-commerce for golf. Can you tell us a little bit about what role that plays in your overall retail operation? Is it a small slice? Is it managed like under your same umbrella, or is it separate and outside? How does that kind of play a role in your retail operation?
So it is in-house. I jokingly say we have a 2.5 person e-commerce team. So we've got two dedicated individuals for e-commerce, and then we have a sort of a swing person that will help with e-commerce during peak season for e-com, which is following Thanksgiving up to Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, different times throughout the year. And that individual also helps out with our corporate sales as well throughout the year. E-com represents about 5% of what we do. It's an area that we are looking to grow a little bit, but one of the things I don't want to say handcuffed, I think that's a little bit of a strong term, but we're hindered by a bit is just the physical space we have to
Mm.
devote to ecom. We've invested a little more in our ecom team this year. We've seen the results. Our Q2 results were up about 25% over last year. So it's a huge opportunity for growth for us, primarily driven through social media. We are looking to, fingers crossed, move into a new retail warehouse that would house ecom and hopefully the next maybe 18 months or so. Again, that just goes back to the willingness that Pinehurst has to invest in the property and invest in what we need to not only meet our current demand, but to meet this anticipated growth. But it is e-commerce, it's not slowing down at all. It doesn't take away from your brick and mortar sale one
Hmm.
bit. I think there's a little bit of an old school thought that if they're buying it
Yes.
online, they're not buying it from you. I think we've all kind of proven that's not really a threat to our brick and mortar stores. But again, it goes back to like a lot of things, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think we're making the investment that we need to make, not only now, but for the future as well. And again, I hope we're having this conversation in a year from now or 2 years from now, and it's a bigger slice of the pie. I hope the entire
Right.
pie gets bigger, but I hope ecom is a bigger slice of it as well.
Sure. Yes, that's great and couldn't agree more. You get out of it what you put in, and it just takes a little different type of effort and time than
Yeah.
your brick and mortar.
There's a lot more behind the scenes with ecom.
Yes.
We do feed a lot off of the products we are featuring in stores, but we do see the benefit as well of doing these one-off products that are only available
Mm-hmm.
online. The collab route that I think was really popular during COVID, I think we're starting to see it. I don't want to say dry up, but people are
Hmm.
starting to be much more selective of that. I
Mm.
think during COVID, when a lot of people were just sitting home with disposable income, were
Right.
just clicking and buying everything that came across their plate. If you said the word
Sure.
collab, it was just an automatic sell. Right. And I
Sure.
think now we're being a little choosier about who
Mm.
decide that we're going to pursue these collabs with, and just making sure that, again, not unlike what we talked about earlier, choosing new brands that
Mhm.
they fit the image of our property
Mhm.
and but also fit our customer profile both on course and online.
Mhm. Yes, I'd say the same for limited edition, similar
Hmm.
to collab. It
Correct.
feels a little less of that
Correct.
excitement that was
Mhm.
there a couple years ago for that. So
Absolutely.
interesting. What's next for retail at Pinehurst? Are there any upcoming launches or initiatives you're particularly excited about? I know you've talked about some of the things like growing e-commerce, the upcoming logos you have, and all that, but anything else that you're excited to have coming up on the horizon?
Yeah, we've got one of the mantras of our ownership here is always Pinehurst, always better. And we certainly have felt that in retail over the last year and a half that I've been here. And we've got a number of things on tap, some of which I can talk about, some of them I can't. But
Sure.
we just opened up a new clubhouse, a new pro shop at number 10. We were operating out of a trailer. It opened last year in April out of a temporary pro shop up until I think the last week of June 25th or so is when we opened the clubhouse and pro shop there. It's just a beautiful building. It fits the aesthetic. If you've been to Pinehurst but not yet visited number 10, it's 5 miles away from the main campus. It's a
Mm.
beautiful piece of property. Even if you're not playing golf there, it's worth going out there and taking a visit. Our restaurant will open out there in about a month. So it'll be adjacent to the main clubhouse in its own building. And just the experience that we're creating out there at what we call the Pinehurst Sand Mines, which will again ultimately house number 10, number 11. There's plans for lodging there. There's obviously food and beverage that's opening up in about a month or so, along with a few other wrinkles that may come in the next 5 years or so. We're really creating an entirely new experience out there. So really excited about the new pro shop there and what we've created there. Just adjacent to the main campus here, we announced this via our channels and via Titleist social media channels a few weeks ago. But the Titleist shop at Pinehurst, it's a brand new venture. It's a retail and fitting venture between us and between Titleist. Right now, the only ones that exist, I think there are two in Korea. So we'll be
Oh,
the only
wow.
ones stateside.
Very cool.
We'll have limited edition merchandise. It'll be the epicenter to get fitted for Titleist equipment, clubs, balls, etc.
Uh-huh.
Again, that's opening in a couple of, I think about 4 weeks or so, 4 weeks from today, maybe 5 weeks. It's just going to be just a feather in our cap that we've
Great.
worked really hard on over the last year. It's been a lot of fun behind the scenes with this project, developing the products, developing our service standards for that, whether it's just the attendants there or the our golf professionals that are doing the fittings there. It's going to be just a really cool, unique experience that, like I said, there's only one or two others, and they're both in Korea. So there, we'll expect traffic from all
Mm.
over the states and who knows where else. But I personally can't wait for that facility to open. I think it's going to be fun to watch not only the opening, but the evolution of that facility
Mm.
over the first 6 months to a year and figuring
Mhm.
out what we need to do to really take that facility to the next level, even after it opens up and continue to
Great.
service our guests in the best way. And then we've got a few more things probably in the next 6 months to a year. I don't want don't want to tease people too much, but a few things that are in the works that I think you'll probably see more to be announced in the next 6 months or so. But when I started here a year and a half ago, U.S. Open prep was going on. And right outside my window, it was the constant hum of tractors and
Uh-huh.
backhoes and just equipment being moved. And I jokingly asked the staff, I said, is it always like this here? Are we always doing something? And the answer to that question is yes. We are
Oh.
always, whether it's on the food and beverage side, with two new restaurants in the works. Last year, we opened up the Carolina Vista Lounge, which, if you visited Pinehurst over the years, is the old Ryder Cup bar and really needed a facelift. I know there's a lot of people that enjoyed the charm of the Ryder Cup bar, but it needed a facelift. It needed to match what was going on at the hotel, and we accomplished that. And the one thing about Pinehurst is that everything is under evaluation at all times. I
Right.
think it's such a fun environment to work where if you bring an idea to the table, we've all been in situations where you think of an idea and you're like, that'll never fly. Here it might, and it might fly, and it might soar even. It's a lot of fun to work for a company and a facility where if you've got an idea, it's going to be vetted out. It won't just be dismissed. So it's just a great advantage that we have, and just there's always something exciting going on.
That's terrific. That's very fun what you asked about all the construction. That's fun. Awesome. And finally, what advice would you give to, say, a merchandiser or buyer in our AGM community who's perhaps stepping into a leadership role in a
Mhm.
larger facility for the first time? So maybe coming from a smaller club, stepping into a bigger role in a bigger place. What advice might you give?
So I did this at Sea Pines and here at Pinehurst as well, moving into those leadership roles. I think a lot of people, when they're in that role, especially for the first time, they feel a need to make an impact, and they think, okay, this company's brought me on. I need to make an impact and to be able to point to something and say, I did that. That's me. I did that. And that could very well work for a lot of people. I think one of the things that I tried to do at Sea Pines and here at Pinehurst is really approach the first 12 months or so in kind of an evaluatory, I
Mm,
don't know if that's a word, I may have just made that up, but just looking at things and evaluating things and really saying, okay, I've got the opportunity, the way the retail business works, everything that's here now and really here for the next 6 months to a year, I really didn't have a part of, right? Whether it was Laura prior to me or Heather in her buys, looking at these things. So I don't have this attachment to it to say, okay, I really want to make
uh,
sure this line does good or
uh-huh.
this particular product. So looking at it with eyes wide open and being able to
Mhm,
say, hey, maybe this wasn't the best fit for us, or maybe this was good, but maybe it needed to be in a different shop, or maybe
mm,
from a service standards, hey, how do we do this? How do we handle
mhm,
that? And really just take those first 12 months or so and just evaluate the operation. Pinehurst has been here for 130 years and they've done things really well for the majority, if not all of that time. They don't need me to come in and reinvent the wheel, but a fresh set of eyes never hurts anything. Seeing not only where we could change to be more profitable and more efficient for our operations, but also looking at our staff and seeing where
mhm,
can I give them support. I
mhm,
think one of the
mhm,
best things that a leader can do is just try to figure out where he can support or she can support their staff as best as possible. And you don't learn that on day one. You don't learn it on
mhm,
day two. And sometimes the only thing that you can learn that from is experience. You can, we do an employee engagement survey here. We actually just finished it up last week, and it's a very useful tool to really see where you stand, how your employees feel about the job they're doing, how, quite frankly, how they feel about the job that you're doing and that I'm doing as a leader. But also, there's no substitute for just taking the time to get to know your staff, to talk with
mhm,
them, to really learn what makes them tick. And even going back to my Kiawah days, when you have a large staff, I've always said you hold everybody to the same standards, but I don't believe in this idea of treating everybody the same. I can come crack a joke with one individual and they may think it's the most hilarious thing ever and it may hurt someone else's feelings, right? So
mhm,
I think knowing how to communicate with each
mhm,
individual on your team, again, holding everybody to the same standards, but learning how to treat each individual differently. I don't think it's fair to blanket everybody and to expect everybody to respond to the
mhm,
same sort of management style. You may find yourself, you talk about management styles. I think if you're a good manager or a good leader, you probably have multiple styles, right? Because
mhm,
you can't expect everybody to respond in the same way. It's not fair.
mhm.
Um, if you've got, I only have one child, but if you have more than one, if you have multiple kids,
Great.
you got to treat them differently. I don't care what
Mhm.
anybody says. I have an older brother. He and I are completely different. We're polar opposites. So I don't know how my mom and dad did it dealing with the two of us. I think it's just, again, learning your staff, being in that sort of evaluation mode for the first 6 to 12, then maybe even 18 months as you really learn a larger operation, learning what makes people tick, what they respond to, what they don't respond to, and then
Mhm,
putting those things into practice and just making sure that, again, people talk about being in a leadership role, but you're so much of leadership, good leadership, in my opinion, is support and
mhm.
hopefully giving them the support that they need to excel at their roles.
Wow, such terrific points. I like what you mentioned specifically on not being attached to when you arrive there of orders arriving or decisions that were made before your time. I think that's important that you have that. Like you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's a great way to start a new role,
Hmm.
not with coming in with maybe too much preconceived notions and really
Hmm.
having a fresh plate set of eyes
Yeah.
to take everything in
And
before. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the benefits of the job and the way that we do it, right? Is that we, in retail, we are looking at things so far in advance.
Hmm.
When you do enter a new role for the first
Hmm.
time, especially from a product standpoint, If you're able
Sure.
to just step back and say, okay, like I said earlier, I have no emotional attachment to any of it, then choose this product. Let
Right.
me look at it through a fresh set of eyes and,
Mhm.
90% of it or 95% may be great. So what can I do to tweak that other 5 to 10% to
Right.
make it just as good, if not great,
Mhm.
as everything else that's out on the floor? And so I think it really benefits us. To some degree in retail, you may get a little bit of a hall pass, right? Because you've got that 6 to 12 month lead
Right.
time on things. So it's beneficial just to look at things through a fresh set of eyes and see what you can do to keep the train rolling, but also make it a little more efficient if you can.
Amazing. I love that idea. I think that about wraps up our conversation for today. Thank you so much, Benji, for joining us. I think this was some great insights for some of our AGM members who might be stepping into bigger roles or just want to learn a little bit more about all you do at Pinehurst. So thank you.
Justine, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. This has been fun.
Absolutely, anytime. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Fairway to Retail Success. We hope you'll join us again next time. Take care, everyone.